Some claim there are ancient prophets who have predicted the future with chilling accuracy.
He saw so many terrible things in the future coming.
Many say these prophets have foretold an apocalypse that is nearly upon us.
We are living in what the Bible calls the end of the age.
We're coming to the peak on so many things. There's going to be some type of doomsday event.
But these dire predictions could be nothing more than dark fantasies.
There's no doubt at all that people take these doomsday threats far too seriously.
Everybody go through the kitchen and get your weapons.
Let's go. Come on, hurry up.
Deep in rural Texas, Paul Range and his family are preparing for a cataclysmic event.
Go, 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 go. Let's go. Let's look out. Come on,
They
go.
don't know how it will happen
Come on, go, go, go. Okay, guys, as quick as possible. We got to get out of here.
or when exactly it will hit,
All the way back door. We need a gunner.
but they feel that it's near,
Everybody secure? Let's go.
and there may be no way to stop it.
There are so many events, and we're coming to the peak on so many things. There's going to be some type of doomsday event.
A lot of people think something is fixing to happen, and it's fixing to happen fast.
We've got a house of cards. At any time, one of those cards could fail, and everything's going to topple.
I think that you ought to have a plan to save yourself.
This family are getting ready for what they believe will be the darkest time in human history. But they are not the only ones who sense doom and damnation on the horizon.
Some people wonder whether, is there any way that humanity can turn around so that they can stop the apocalypse? I don't think that's possible.
Some people believe that signs of doom have been foretold in prophecy since the beginning of time.
We're already dealing with some of the crises and so many of the dark prophecies that we've been led to believe we could expect in the near term.
One of the most famed prophets of doom is a 16th century French astrologer by the name of Michel de Nostradame, known as Nostradamus.
When we hear the word prophet, one of the first names that comes to many people is the prophet Nostradamus, who has gained tremendous popularity and visibility in our time, perhaps even more than he had in his own day.
John Hogue has been studying Nostradamus and his collection of prophecies for 30 years.
Nostradamus is the quintessential Renaissance fan. We know him for his prophecies, but he was an astrologer, he was a physician, he was a pharmacist.
But Nostradamus' life was to take a dark turn.
Nostradamus was marked and scarred by tragedy. In 1538, his family died of the plague, his 2 children and his wife, from a plague he couldn't cure. Life experiences of a prophet will color how they interpret what they see. I think the death of his family did to him what has been done to a lot of people who follow a mystical path. It shattered their dreams, their illusions about life. They have an existential crisis. I think that this actually gave birth out of tragedy of his prophetic gifts.
After the death of his family, Nostradamus begins writing his famous prophecies.
Nostradamus planned to write a history of the future in 10 volumes called Centuries.
he wrote his prophecies in terms of symbols and analogy in very mysterious phrasing called quatrains.
What Nostradamus did was channel spirits. He would go up into a secret study, and then he would mount a bowl of boiling waters. Perhaps some narcotic herbs were also added. He came into the ecstatic trance state. He described what he saw as shadowy images of the future. It was almost like he came into a continuum where the whole future, past, present, and future was there before him. Nostradamus is probably the most pessimistic prophet I've ever encountered. He saw so many terrible things in the future coming.
Believers say he predicted events far into the future, including the rise of one of the worst villains in all human history.
A captain of Greater Germany will come to deliver a false help. King of Kings to support Hungary. His war will cause great shedding of blood.
This is about Hitler. He is the captain of Greater Germany. That was the official name of Hitler's empire. It was Großdeutschland, Greater Germany. He was a king of kings. He made himself out to be a messiah of the Aryan race. Hitler in this prophecy is described as Hister. He shows up 5 times in the prophecies as this Hister.
But there are other ways one can interpret the term Hister.
The word Hister was actually Latin for the lower Danube River, and it's quite clear from the context of the quatrain that that is what is being referred to. It's not referring to a person at all, it's referring to a geographical area.
Skeptics doubt that Nostradamus had any real prophetic ability.
Any of these quatrains can be interpreted in any way you want to fit any event you want. He was a master at formulating prophecies because he ensured by wording them so vaguely that they probably outlived their expected lifespan, but they have no truth value whatsoever.
But believers argue that Nostradamus predicted certain details of the future that no man living in the 16th century could have possibly imagined.
Near the harbor and in 2 cities will occur 2 scourges the like of which have never been seen. Hunger, plague within, people thrown out by the sword will cry for help from the immortal God.
Those particular lines, people have interpreted it as being some kind of reference to the bombing of Japan.
There will occur 2 scourges, the like of which have never been seen.
It could mean these 2 harbors were bombed by a new kind of weapon never before seen. If Nostradamus was actually seeing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he would wonder what kind of barbarity is mankind becoming.
But skeptics argue that linking this quatrain to Hiroshima is tenuous at best.
When you actually look at the next line, it makes clear references to famine within plague. The only way that you can come up with that interpretation is by cherry-picking the lines that seem to fit the interpretation you want to give it and ignoring the other lines that don't fit.
Back in rural Texas, Doomsday prepper Paul Range fears that a nuclear attack is a real possibility.
Everybody thinks about the nuclear problem. I worry about a country who has just a couple of nukes, throwing them at another country, and then things escalating.
Of course, at all times, we'll have a guard at each corner of the building.
You have to be prepared for any eventuality. We have the basics, we have the water, we have the food, and we have the shelter. I'm fully capable of living off the land. It's not as good as existence, but, you are alive.
Paul Range and his family are part of a growing number of people who call themselves Doomsday Preppers.
The term Doomsday Prepper connotates people like us who have an incredible amount of food stored up and are prepared to use it and defend our families.
To the point where you're ready for everything, including a doomsday.
Some Doomsday Preppers believe certain cataclysmic events have already been foretold by prophets like Nostradamus.
Nostradamus did some incredible predictions that actually came true.
Many Nostradamus believers claim that he predicted one of the darkest days of the 21st century.
The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches the great new city. Immediately, a huge scattered flame leaps up when they want to have proof of the Normans.
This quatrain became the terrorist attack on New York City on September 11, 2001. The great new city has to be a city that hadn't been created in Nostradamus' time. A new, great new city with half the name in it, New York. From 45 degrees comes the fire, a huge scattered flame. And if you look at the North Tower, look closely to the imprint of the jet. It is at 45 degrees.
But skeptics say this quatrain has nothing to do with the September 11th terrorist attacks.
People who are now looking for prophecies that supposedly apply to the 21st century fail to understand that would not have been his concern. What was the biggest existential threat to the people of Europe at the time? The Ottoman Empire, which right before Nostradamus was writing this book, had acquired large sections of what we call the Balkans nowadays. Where would 45 degrees latitude be? It would be in the area of the northern Balkans. I think more likely he was talking about some attack by the Ottoman Turks on an area in the Balkans. There's no reason to interpret that as referring to New York City, in other words.
But believers claim that other prophecies support this interpretation of the 9/11 attacks. In another quatrain, Nostradamus describes an evil being called Marbus, whose death will trigger great upheaval around the world.
Marbus will soon die, and there will come a dreadful destruction of people and animals. Suddenly, vengeance will appear, 100 hands, thirst and hunger, when the comet passes.
Nostradamus believers say Marbus was the code name for the third and final Antichrist.
Nostradamus is unique in prophetic traditions. He's the only one I've ever uncovered that doesn't see one Antichrist, but three. The first, Napoleon Bonaparte. The second Antichrist, Hitler. The third Antichrist is codenamed Mabus, M-A-B-U-S. There are ways that Mabus can be decoded.
Hogue believes that one contemporary candidate for Marbus could be Osama bin Laden.
Nostradamus spoke Arabic, so he would pronounce in Latin letters the correct spelling. Usama, U-S-A-M-A. He uses anagrams, word plays. So Usama becomes M-A-A-U-S. Redundant A, replaced by the missing B. Mabus.
But some think Hogue's wordplay is open to criticism.
What people will do if they can't fit the wording somehow into an event that they think that Nostradamus predicted, they scramble the words around, so somehow if you look at it in a mirror, or you hold it up backwards, or you put the first letter last, somehow you get something that supposedly fits some event. It's all just hogwash.
Lindsay says every one of Nostradamus' quatrains fails one important test.
Not one has been used successfully to predict an event in advance. What happens is that after an event has happened, whether the event happened in the 1800s or 1900s or in 2001, is that people will look back at a quatrain and say, oh, this is what he meant. So it's retroactive prediction, if you will, or retrodiction.
The verses are so vague that they are all open to multiple interpretations. People can only make the verses fit the historical events by picking the bits that fit and ignoring the bits that don't. There's a lot in the life of Nostradamus, but the idea that he actually had some kind of prophetic ability, I really don't think that is supported by the evidence.
I would say Nostradamus was a prophet, but he was a false prophet.
Warning. You've reached On the Box with Ray Comfort and are now in a biblical truth zone.
Evangelist Ray Comfort believes Nostradamus had a secret source for his predictions.
He plagiarized, and it's obvious he plagiarized from the Bible. Some of Nostradamus's prophecies do seem to come true, and that's because they were derived directly from the Bible. So Nostradamus gains credibility from people who don't know what the Bible actually says.
Every week, Ray Comfort takes to the airwaves to speak about what he believes to be the only true prophecy.
Today we're going to look at the subject of prophecy. One of my favorite prophecies is the true prophet is what we see manifest in the Old Testament. Samuel and Isaiah and Jeremiah, they were prophets of God. They were 100% correct in their prophecies. Here is the actual Bible verse. There'll be false teachers among you. The Bible makes it very clear that certain things will come to pass. And they aren't like the prophecies of Nostradamus. They're not nebulous. They're extremely specific. You certainly see a fulfillment of that prophecy. So if we want to know what happens in the future, we don't need to look to prophets. All we need to do is open the pages of Holy Scripture. Open the Bible at Matthew 24, Luke 21, 2 Timothy chapter 3, and you can learn what tomorrow's newspaper is going to say. Each year, millions die from the plague of cancer.
There are many interpretations of the Bible, and some believe it predicts a dark future.
The Bible does say in the latter times there will be perilous times. There'll be a lot of violence and wars and rumors of wars and famines and earthquakes. And the Bible calls them birth pains.
Ray Comfort says that the Bible is telling us that the end times are happening now.
What's another sign of the end of the times Jesus spoke of in Matthew 24, verse 7? He said, and there shall be earthquakes in different places.
According to Ray Comfort's interpretation of the Bible, a great battle is coming between good and evil.
Read the book of Revelation, makes the hair stand up in the back of your neck. It's so scary. That's when we see the Battle of Armageddon. The Bible speaks of pillars of smoke. It speaks of men melting under the heat, the fervent heat from this battle. It says that it'll be 7 months and burying the dead.
Ray Comfort is part of a group of Christians who believe in end times prophecies.
The world was bad back then. The world is bad right now. A flood was coming back then, and there's an end of the world coming around the corner.
Like Ray Comfort, Pastor Steve Wahlberg sees signs of the end times all around him.
I'm a student of prophecy. I look at the news and I look at the book, and I can see them fitting together very clearly. There's bad news in the world, and the bad news from the Bible is that the signs are going to increase. I personally believe that it is very possible that we are the last generation in the history of this world.
These end times preachers are not the only ones who see prophetic messages in the Bible. But while they read the Bible text literally,
Glad that you were here today.
Praise the Lord.
others study it, like cryptographers.
Encrypted within the Torah text itself is a code which seems to show a certain pattern that could only be put there by a master intelligence.
Throughout history, there have been certain religious scholars who have tried to find codes in the Torah. And with the advent of computers, their search became easier.
They were able to automate a very tedious process. One of the ways they did this was through something called a skip code sequence.
In a skip code, hidden words and messages are buried into a larger body of text. Each letter of the hidden message is separated by a predetermined number of skipped letters.
The entire Torah is seen as one continuous string of letters, almost like a binary code you would find in a computer program.
And different letter skipping sequences are tested until a message is revealed. Using the skip code theory, researchers began to search the Torah for hidden messages.
They chose the names of 32 historic rabbis. They ran the test against the Torah codes, and the Torah code identified all 32 rabbis, the dates they were born, the dates that they died.
They repeated the experiment, and again, with other names, and found these prominent rabbis as well.
What are the odds of that happening?
Sometimes the messages appear nearly on top of each other. Other times they are spread across long stretches of text.
These names are found in a very small interval of maybe only a few letters as opposed to 1,000 letters.
Researchers claimed that the proximity of these messages being found in passages with related meanings is not due to chance.
The uniqueness is that the passage where the code was discovered is very relevant to what this code is uncovering.
And the researchers found more than just names of historical rabbis. Key words connected to many events have been found encoded in the Torah.
Presidential elections, presidential assassinations, Apollo 11, the man on the moon. All of these and more are encoded in the text.
But the question is, did allusions to these events appear by chance, or are they the work of a supreme being?
People have asked about things like 9/11, September 11th. Was it in the Torah codes?
To test if the Torah held predictions of the 9/11 attacks, researchers chose the most common words found in news reports of the tragedy.
Twin Towers, terror, attack,
and
airplane,
input each one into the Torah code software.
New York.
In one cluster, a group of these words were found in a string of 738 letters. A tiny fraction of the Torah.
This could not have happened unless it was designed, and that there is a designer that has encoded within the Torah a prediction of such a world-shattering event.
The proponents of the Torah code say that the messages they claim they're found there are evidence of some superintelligence, which they equate usually with God. You don't need an intelligent being to design this. All you need to do is have the names picked out in advance, then run the computer program a number of different times, and you'll come up with these names. If you look for faces in the cloud long enough, you'll find faces in the cloud.
The Torah is a blueprint of creation and spells out predictions and insights for all people and for all times. Even a premonition, a prognostication for future events.
But critics question the Torah code's power to predict future events.
That's not prediction, that's retrofitting. That's not being able to foretell the future, it's fitting the event to the verse after it's happened.
Still, Torah code researchers claim that there is an example of a prediction being revealed in the Torah code before it happened.
1995, there's a phenomenon that suddenly became front and center.
Some researchers were picking up the pulse of what was going on in Israel. There were some very radical factions who were calling for the oust of Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister at the time. Those who were searching the codes saw something happening.
They began to find information about Yitzhak Rabin.
Torah code believers say emerging from the text came a prediction of Rabin's assassination.
In fact, they actually warned Yitzhak Rabin.
But they say their warning was ignored.
Mother will skip your
November 4th, 1995. Israeli Prime Minister Rabin is murdered in cold blood by Yigal Amir.
The question is, how could a written text over 3,000 years old have encoded the possibilities?
While the Torah Code's ability to predict Rabin's assassination may seem impressive to believers, skeptics say it is nothing more than random chance and opportunism.
Using the same methods that the proponents of the Torah Code have put forward, you could come up with similar results in any book of a similar length. A number of scientists have done a similar sort of methodology on other works of literature, especially Moby Dick, and they've come up with a whole set of meaningful terms.
Lindsay reasons that these seemingly meaningful terms are just random occurrences in a realm of infinite possibilities, a product of chance, not divine design.
It doesn't seem to me that there's really any good argument for saying the Torah Code reveals God's messages.
When you talk about coded warnings and coded messages, whether they were really intentional codes or is just something that somebody's found trying to find a deeper meaning in what's there, I don't know how to answer that question.
Even if they don't know all the answers, the preppers believe there is something to these predictions of doom.
There are a lot of diverse people that are pretty worried. Whether it's a religious aspect or whether it's just a gut feeling, there are people that have an understanding of the future.
Whatever is coming, Paul Range and his family are ready for the worst.
And we're prepared because we have our own food. If need be, we have our own source of power. We have somewhere around 40 to 50,000 pounds of food in the container, and another 3,000 in the buses right now.
We have dried sweet potatoes here. We have pastas and rices, chicken soup, lima beans, red beans.
Here is bacon that I can.
If we had a end-of-the-world scenario that happened tomorrow, we would be able to support up to 22 people for between 15 and 20 years. We have solar panels, we have wind generators. With a flick of the switch, we could be off the grid in just a few moments. There's a lot of predictions out there. It's always good to be prepared.
Throughout time, prophets have claimed to see the future through shadowy visions, cryptic codes, and religious texts. Some say one ancient culture used their mastery of astronomy to see a future foretold by the movement of the stars.
When we talk about ancient prophecies and predictions, for many people, one of the first visions that comes to mind, the ideas of the ancient Maya.
And some believe that the Maya saw prophecies in the stars that warned of the coming annihilation of the world.
The Maya are the indigenous people of southern Mesoamerica. They date as far back as 1000 BCE.
For thousands of years, the Maya prospered as one of the greatest civilizations of its time. At its peak in the first millennia, the Maya lived across most of Central America and what is now southern Mexico.
The legacy of the Maya is really remarkable. They had a very complex, sophisticated, and multi-layered way to understand the world.
Researchers found that the Maya had a highly advanced understanding of astronomy and mathematics.
The Maya gave us profound insights into our relationship with the universe, cycles of time, astronomy.
They looked to the sky for many things. They practiced what is called naked eye astronomy without telescopes and charts and computer programs. The Maya were using their sight really, really acutely.
And they used their superior astronomical knowledge to calculate detailed patterns of time.
Many people consider the Maya calendar to be the most accurate of the ancient world.
The Maya believed that time is divided into cycles.
They said these are the cycles that you, humankind, will experience within this large window of time called a Great World Age, 5,125 years long.
The Maya believed the world experiences great cycles of time. And according to Maya creation mythology, the gods created and destroyed the human race various times.
The Maya could have an idea in the far future the world might be ending, but they did not have a date for it. There was a deep memory, at least in mythology, of gods creating and then destroying their creations.
When we talk about the end of a cycle, that brings up a lot of concern and a lot of images of fearing and catastrophic events.
According to the Maya calendar, we have reached the end of the current cycle. But little is known about what the Maya believed would mark the final days of their great cycle. To this day, much about the Maya remains shrouded in mystery. But a small part of their written history has been recovered in an ancient text known as a codex.
A codex is generally a very important book or manuscript. For the Maya, a codex is a religious or historical document that is painted on native paper or animal skin. The Dresden Codex is the most well-known.
Doomsday theorists say the Dresden Codex contains a prophetic section that predicts the end of the world.
Page 74 of the Dresden Codex has drawn a lot of interest, and even if you can't read the glyphs, the illustration is very compelling. There is a skirted figure who is probably a Maya priest. The figure is holding a jug, probably of water, and in many ways it fulfills a Westerner's notion of apocalyptic imagery, where there is water, there's a little bit of fire, and it actually matches some European codices about the apocalypse that were painted shortly before the year 1000.
Some have interpreted the images in the Dresden Codex as signs of world destruction, including devastating floods, violence, and disaster. But Kristen Graham does not believe this interpretation of the Codex means the Maya predicted doomsday.
The Maya had some creation stories, and in them they have descriptions of the underworld. So to have that page in the Dresden Codex is not really atypical for the Maya at all. Some of the imagery of the Maya is a little bit unpleasant for some people to look at, but it really, I think, has nothing to do with end times. I think the Maya had no conception that the world was going to end anytime. They had a belief in cyclical time. From what scholars know about the Maya sense of history and calendrics, they just thought the calendar would keep on going.
But some doomsday theorists believe that the end of the current Maya cycle will bring on a total global upheaval that they say we are already starting to witness.
We're already witnessing the warming of the oceans and the atmosphere and the ice melting and the sea levels rising. Superstorms wiping entire communities from the face of the earth.
But skeptics argue that linking the end of the Maya cycle to current global conditions is baseless.
Christianity has prophetic writing in it, And it may be that some modern readers looked to the Maya and imposed that worldview on a culture that wasn't Christian and didn't really have an idea about apocalypse.
There are some people who think that global warming will bring about the end of the world. Some people have connected that to ancient prophecies, but there is no connection. It's people reading into the data what they want to.
Still, some doomsdayers say that global warming is a clear sign of the end.
We are living in what the Bible calls the end of the age. Just the change of the climate and the planet and the wars and the tsunamis and earthquakes and floods and all these different plagues that are coming on the earth.
There are all kinds of things like great earthquakes happening in various places, famines, pestilences, diseases, tsunamis. We can look at the newspaper and we can look at the Bible and we can recognize that what Jesus predicted 2,000 years ago, these things are happening right in front of us. In Revelation chapter 11, verse 18, the Bible predicts that at some point God will destroy those who destroy the earth. I think that God speaks to us often through natural phenomena. And as we look at the scientific explanations, to me, it just fits in with the prophecy that right before the end, human beings will be destroying the earth.
Nostradamus believers say he too saw climate change as a sign of the end.
Because of heat like that of the sun upon the sea, the fish around Negroponte will become half-cooked. The local people will eat them when in Rhodes and Genoa there is a lack of food.
One possible interpretation of this quatrain is that it's about a global warming event. There are certainly many prophecies that talk about fish boiled hectic from the fire in the sky, and others dealing with great droughts across the grain belts of the northern hemisphere. It's described very clearly in Nostradamus' prophecies: global warming, rising oceans, population problems, global famine.
Doomsdayers say they see predictions of global warming from prophets throughout history.
And they all point to this time in history. They point to the time of the climate change.
A global climate disaster is one of the Doomsday Preppers' biggest fears.
A lot of people are worried about the climate change.
There's a big chain of events that's coming that's going to shape what's happening to us.
We are overdue for some mega disasters, whether they are disease, whether they are famine, whether they are drought, whatever. There's a lot of things that are interconnected. And I don't think it's going to be any one thing. I think it's going to be a series of things.
For us, it doesn't really matter what the event is. We're going to be prepared. We have multiple layers of defense. We have the physical barriers of the fences at the perimeter of the property. And then we have other barriers approaching the house.
If you can't hold what you have, if you can't defend your food stores or your water stores, you're just as dead as if you didn't have them.
As a last resort, Paul's family has a plan of escape.
If, and only if, things got so bad that we could not hold what we had, then we would bug out.
A bug out is where we're uprooting from our normal position and leaving as quickly as possible.
Okay, gotta load it up!
So the preppers practice their bug-out plan twice a year.
The importance of a drill is knowing that your plan has a chance of success. You don't know what it's going to be like until you've gone through it.
We will be ready, and we are ready to take action.
But there are many who think that Paul Range and his family are preparing for a disaster that is unlikely to ever occur.
There's no doubt at all that people can take lots of these doomsday threats far too seriously. People have bought into doomsday predictions And then, of course, the world is carried on, and they've ended up feeling very silly and embarrassed and having to start again from scratch.
If we devote our lives to preparing for and defending ourselves against the most frightening of the possibilities, that we miss life itself. We miss the very things that make life worth living.
While it seems there will always be prophets predicting doom and darkness, skeptics maintain that prophecy is often nothing more than dark delusions, never come true.
End of the world prophecies, they are simply attention grabbers. You can't top it in terms of the gravity of it. There are people who think that doomsday is upon us, but no doomsday prophecy has ever come true, and the proof of that is that we are existing and living and talking in this world.